Here on LAG, we discuss hundreds, if not thousands, of news stories and articles every single year. When I bring up these topics, all of you share your opinions, and for a day or two, we get into these heated debates or we shitpost and share memes, and we have a jolly good time. Given the quantity of topics we discuss, the hardest thing for me to do is to follow up on topics and see how they've developed. One of the more recent controversies that some of you may have come across was the dragging of Jeanine Cummins, the author of American Dirt. Here to give us some background and updates on the story is Ryan Casarez-Merrell. Ryan, thanks for joining us today. Last time we talked, we discussed the controversy behind American Dirt, which was a book that Oprah was telling her entire book club to read. For the Latin community members who aren't aware of what's going on, can you give us sort of a backstory on who wrote this thing and why people are so upset?
Definitely. So it is a bit of older news, but I mean it's still relevant because it's an issue that people of color face every day, of course. So American Dirt is a novel written by American author Jeanine Cummins. Up until 4 years ago, she identified solely as white, and right before the book came out, she started to kind of play up her heritage, and she has like a Puerto Rican grandmother. And so the book itself, it's about this woman Lydia. She lives in Mexico with her son and husband. She owns a bookshop, and she becomes friends with like I guess you would classify him as the mysterious Latin lover. He has danger written all over him, but he's a deep poetic person. He has that soul, and little does she know that he's actually the new cartel boss who her husband is writing an expose about. And in retaliation for the expose being published, he murders their family. And like, it's not a spoiler alert, it literally happens within the first page. So um, she ends up deciding to flee Mexico to El Norte, the US, to escape his reach. Um, and the controversy started when um, Miriam Gerba, she is a Latinx author, and she penned a takedown of the book in Tropics of Meta and pointed out a lot of things. So it's kind of difficult to like just bullet point it because you could go on for hours for any of these little topics. But one, uh, it's basically trauma porn covered in social justice sleeves. You know, it plays up and exploits the immigrant experience, or what Clemens thinks the experience is. There are a lot of stereotypical tropes and caricatures that are just overplayed. As I mentioned, the Latin lover. Um, it's the other issue is that there are many, many, many great authors who are Latinx and immigrants. However, I can't think of a single one who's received a seven-figure advance for their work. Now, for anyone who's familiar with publishing or the book industry, um, getting a five-figure sum for your book when you're a new author, that's pretty substantial. It's usually based on how many units you're able to push in stores, and then of course if they want more, they'll order more, and you'll get more money. Um, so yeah, I want to say about five figures is pretty substantial. Whether that's 10,000 or 90,000, just depends. But Cummins got seven figures. So whether that's 1 million or 9 million, she's getting a lot more than everyone else. And the way it was rolled out, it was being portrayed as the grapes of wrath of our time, as the quintessential modern immigrant story. And Gerber was also saying that a lot of the book, it's watered down and borderline plagiarized from other Latinx authors' ideas, and it's the book. It's not written for Latinx immigrants. It's written specifically for middle-aged white women in their book clubs to feel better about themselves for um, jumping on the progressive bandwagon of these are people, not just people who are coming to steal our jobs or whatnot. Um, then there was the fact that uh, Cummins, she something that that irritated me was the fact that she did her research, and I say that loosely. Um, so prior to writing this, she herself said that she wished that someone browner than her would have written this story. News alert: somebody already has. They just haven't gotten paid for it. Um, and she acknowledged that because of her background, she doesn't necessarily feel that it's appropriate that she's writing about that life experience when she hasn't come from that and has no idea about it. But she did go to the border. There are missionaries, in Mexico that help migrants, going north or wherever they're going to go. Um, she went to a few of those, spoke with missionaries, border patrol people, and detainees, people who've actually made that journey. And the final green light for her, she spoke with the head of the Chicano Studies program at San Diego State, and that mentor pretty much told her after she read a draft of the book that we need more voices like that. And so yeah, there's all that together. That was um, the beginning of it, and yeah, she's not denying that there's quote unquote racist things in the book, but she's not exactly admitting it either. You know she's she's trying to pull what I think is quote unquote like artistic liberty, because it's a work of fiction and it doesn't represent everyone. um this this particular story is fine. Yes, that was what happened, and as a result, a lot of Latinx authors, actually over 140 authors, including like Roxane Gay, Rebecca Solnit, and a bunch of others, all petitioned Oprah, telling her, drop this book and pick something else, please. But of course, she didn't. So Oprah's trying to make it come across as like she's trying to look for the humanity in the story.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, but my thing though is, would she feel the same had this been, um, Trent Smith from Yale writing about Traquan in South Harlem? You know what I'm saying? Like, what, would she feel the same? I, I don't think so. But yes, that is the gist of it, as long-winded as that was.
Uh, so now that we have sort of a really good foundation and a better understanding of this background, what's going on now? What's changed since we've last heard from the story? Any new developments?
So new-ish. I mean, within recent months. I mean, um, after the book was announced, I want to say like the next 2 to 3 weeks or so was filled with everyone on Instagram. Those authors who penned the petition, them along with um, a lot of other Latinx authors created a social movement. And I know I'm going to butcher this because I am I am a coconut. I am white inside, so I'm going to butcher the name. But it's the social movement was called uh, Dignidad Literaria. The social movement was meant to keep the publishing industry accountable, for not only what they put out, but who also they put on staff. Um, Gerba, along with founders of the movement, met with Flatiron. They're one of the subdivisions of the big five of publishers. Hold up, I have the list right here. Hang on. Where was it? You have, Simon and Schuster, Penguin Random House, HarperCollins. Um, I think it's called Hatchet, and then Macmillan. They're the ones they have Flatirons. So yes, they promised. I mean, uh, as a um, policy to implement, to hire more people of color on their committees, um, and to represent more authors of color. Something else that happened in between before the meeting, though, there were a lot of death threats exchanged. Cummins and her team from Flatiron, they decided to cancel her official book tour, with stating concerns of safety issues and death threats that were received, supposedly, independent bookstores that were promoting the book. Some said they received notices that there would be not necessarily violence, but there would just be an issue if they had Cummins come in and talk about her book. And then I think it was on, there was I forgot what channel it was, but Miriam Gerba came on, and she said that in actuality, the majority of the death threats were getting sent to her, not Cummins. But you know how some white people are; they always have to try to make themselves the victims, and so claiming it's a safety issue, they cancel the book tour and instead make it a town hall where critics could come up and voice their concerns and questions to Cummins. And honestly, it kind of felt like it's an hour or so of her just getting her ass handed to her, you know. But at the same time, she's already getting paid for it, and there are those who speculated that this controversy was orchestrated, and I can kind of agree with it, because in the book, at the end, there's an author's note, explain herself explaining all this, saying that again, she wishes somebody browner would have wrote it, that she wasn't sure that she was qualified to write it and whatnot. So to me, that's kind of like an admission that you knew what you were doing, you just didn't care enough, you know. But yes, more authors of color are being now represented. Um, and then one of the great social changes that did happen was there was a school in let me pull it up. There was a school in Southern California um, that was actually thanking Gerba and the movement for putting this on, and they decided to have a uh, student-wide protest, or a school protest, to demonstrate how other women of color have been felt that they've been silenced by their teachers and their school administrations. And yeah, it was a staged walkout that was very successful, and it's encouraging other people of color to write about their uh, their experience, facing discrimination, um, and kind of just like creating what's the word, coalitions, if you will, and caucuses, and just bringing together those voices and empowering them to write about it, to get their work out there. And then if you have an iPhone, you might have Apple TV. I, of course, am super poor and broke, so I do not. Most people doesn't have it are rich, but you know what I'm saying. On Apple TV, Oprah invited Cummins as well as Julissa Ars, Esther Sapita, and Renee Grande, um, who are all Latino authors, and try to they asked all the questions that everyone else has been asking, and thankfully they got Oprah to admit her fault and realizing that she wasn't paying as much attention to authors of color like she should have when she was considering a story like this to put out there for her book club. Um, so I mean, Cummins still made a lot of money regardless, but I think it's like the good thing though is that you know this is finally being brought to light, and hopefully we do you will see more authors of color on the shelves instead of what's currently out there.
Now, speaking of book reviews and all things related, I hear you have a new podcast in the works. What is it called? What's it about? And where can we find it?
Yeah, so uh it has been I want to say since we last talked, like in January, I think. I've been searching for someone to be a co-host with me. Finally found a someone on Instagram, Brittany Bowman. We have created the Page Master Book Review Podcast, and as stated, we pretty much are going through all the biggest, like whatever is on the bestsellers list. We're going to be going through that list and breaking down in layman's terms why the books are great or not, and hopefully try to inspire people to pick reading back up. Um, Myself, but with the exception of Harry Potter and Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey, the classic works of art. Um, After high school, I didn't really read unless it was a textbook. And then when I came out here to Texas, I finally got back into reading, and so that's one of the main goals is to get people to pick a book back up. And there are like so many studies out there that have shown like the benefits of just carrying a book around with you. I mean, you think of how many times you're on your commute to work, say you're on the bus or train, whatever, that 15-20 minutes or so, instead of on your phone, you can read, how many pages, and, you know, it's a mental workout. Your vocabulary increases. You get more attuned to people's perception and feelings and whatnot. Um, so yeah, I mean that's what I try to do whenever I leave the house. Well, prior to Corona, whenever I leave the house, always carry a book, and you just see you'll be surprised at how fast you can get through something. But yeah, we are on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and the Anchor.fm app. The first book that we brought out was A Good Neighborhood by Therese Ann Fowler, which also a very timely piece because it has to deal with class and race and how people of color are pretty much what's the word? What's the word? Not marginalized, but
Othered?
um okay, it's you're basically you're oh that's right, yeah. You're basically guilty just because you're already a person of color. Like that's already like because
Okay.
you're a person of color, you're already more guiltier than a white person.
Mhm.
But I won't spoil any of the details. It was a really good read, and I threw the book at the wall because I was pissed at the end. But because of how real it is. Like
Mhm.
it's sad. It is sad. Um, but yes, new episodes drop every Monday at 8 a.m. Um, Eastern time. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know that especially with the quarantine going on, I think a lot of people will definitely have a lot more time to read. But again, as always, it is a pleasure, Ryan, to have you on the show, especially this time around as one of our co-hosts. So we'll definitely have to have you back on to do another report on LAG News.
Awesome. Can't wait.
All right. Take care, Ryan.
All right, you too.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.